Hey, everybody, I'm Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country on MKOCRadio.com. It's a privilege to have this guest on my show tonight. I was honored to see him in concert several years ago, and he puts on a fantastic show. And he is one of the best yodelers out there, one of the best entertainers out there, and he is a real deal cowboy. He ranches out in Montana, and he also writes and records his own music and tours all over the world. And it's a pleasure to have him tonight to talk about his brand new album, 2,000 Miles from Nashville. This is Wylie Gustafson. Wylie, how are you tonight?
Doing great, Scott. Great to be talking to you.
Well, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. It's been a long time, and we're certainly glad to have you on the show. And I want to thank you so much for sending your new album to me. It's fantastic.
You bet. Yeah, we recorded it last October in Nashville with the help of such greats as Kenny Vaughn. He's the guitar player for Marty Stewart and company, and also Chris Scruggs, a great instrumentalist steel player from Nashville who also plays with Marty, too. So
absolutely.
Use a couple of Marty's guys.
Well, that's great. You got some good ones there. The album, the production is fantastic, and I love the artwork, and the songs are outstanding as always. And, of course, you've got a lot of originals on here and a few covers, too.
Yeah.
I really like the version that you did of Ghost Riders in the Sky. That's kind of a hard one to cover. It's been done by so many different artists, but you really put a positive and good spin on it. I love it.
Well, I appreciate that. It's one of those songs we get a lot of requests for, and of course, if you do cowboy music like we do, it's a song you get a lot of requests for, and it's easy to kind of get sick of that song. So we just tried to do an instrumental version, Duane Eddy style. I just love those instrumental versions from the 60s, Adventures, Duane Eddy and those guys, and so we kind of gave it that flavor.
Absolutely. You have a very unique style. You know, you do the very traditional Western songs, and you can turn right around and do, like you just mentioned, like a rockabilly Duane Eddy style, and do it with great authenticity. And I'm assuming as you were growing up, you probably had a lot of different influences from these people.
I did. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and there's so many different styles of music. I grew up in rock and roll, listening to the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and Chuck Berry, guys like that, and rockabilly music, and that all kind of had an influence on me. But, my roots go back to definitely country and Western, and I love country music from the 50s and 60s. To me, that was the best 2 decades of country music. So we go back to those styles and those sounds.
Amen to that, no doubt about it. And I know that you're a long time, your family's been in the ranching business for a long time. You continue to operate your ranch there in Montana, and that's, of course, when you're not on the road, so you're a busy guy.
Yeah, and that ranching, the ranching aspect of it is great. It inspires me to kind of write songs, and I love to write about our culture, our lifestyle out here in the Midwest and West. It gets so overlooked, and there's not a lot of people really singing about this lifestyle nowadays. Country music used to be about the country, and now it's really gone to something different. So I'm one of those artists tries to make sure that we still celebrate this culture, this lifestyle. It's so cool.
Absolutely, and there's certainly a lot of listeners worldwide that absolutely love this music, and I continuously get requests for Western. The Western part of country has kind of gone by the wayside, like you mentioned. It was originally country and Western music, and to me that encompasses the entire spectrum of what country music is really all about, and that's what you're doing
here.
Yeah,
and we're still proud to have the Western as part of country and Western.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to mention right away, the album is called 2,000 Miles from Nashville, High Plains Country Music. You can get it at WylieWebsite.com or at Highline, is that how you say that?
Let me see. WylieWebsite.com, and I'm trying to figure out where else it's available. At all Amazon and iTunes and all those.
Yeah, I know you've got the new ones, Highline Records, Highliner Records. There we go. Now I got it right. If I could only read, I'd be in great shape.
All right.
HighlinerRecords.com. We'll have all that information on our Facebook page. Of course, Wylie has a Facebook page as well. We'll put that link on our website as well for you. And you can get this fantastic new album. And, of course, Wylie's got over 20 other albums that are available. And also a book that you wrote about how to yodel.
Yeah, that book has kind of been a steady seller for us. I wrote it about 10 years ago, and to me, yodeling's kind of a lost art. There's really more. There's a novelty aspect to it to me, but to me, I take it kind of serious and to the next level. I really believe it's a vocal art form that we've kind of lost in this country. So I'm trying to make sure it stays alive and make sure there's another generation of yodelers.
Absolutely, and we do have some of those out there. We have a lady that lives out in Oregon that does a show, and one in Colorado, and she yodels. Her name is Beth Williams, and she's got some yodeling stuff out that we play. And Kristen Harris from down in Texas, she's fantastic. She's been on a show a couple times. She's also carrying that on, and I was exposed to it through Merle Haggard when I was a kid. My favorite album to this day is an album he did about Jimmy Rogers called "Same Train, Different Time."
Yeah, and, I know. I have that album. Great album, and that Jimmy Rogers style of yodeling is kind of what got me into yodeling too. It was a simple style, and when I heard, I said, "Wow!" And then I kind of got into it a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it is definitely an art form. You've got to have amazing control, not only over your breathing voice, but the voice that you use in your nasal passages, and it's kind of a combination to make all that stuff work and do what it needs to do. And I applaud you for it. It's a talent.
Thank you.
And a lot of people may or may not know that you were the famous Yahoo yodeler for the Yahoo.com.
That's right. Back in 1996, Yahoo went public. It just went public, and they needed a yodel for their commercial, and it actually became their audio logo. So, it was heard at the end of every advertisement that they did, for the last 20 years, and so I was happy to be able to be the guy to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Can you do that for me?
You bet. Yahoo! The only hit I've ever written.
I love it. Well, it's known worldwide, without a doubt.
Yep.
That's great. Well, going back to the album, we were talking a little bit about the the Western music and everything, and you've got a song on here that kind of touches on that. Nashville Never Wanted Me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the songs that I write have a large amount of truth to them, especially that one. There was a time that we did have some success in Nashville with our music videos back in the early 90s. We had a lot of videos out on CMT and TNN at the time when they played independent artists like me. And then the other part of the Nashville that accepted us was the Grand Ole Opry. We've had over 50 appearances there.
Wow.
But the commercial side of Nashville, it would have nothing to do with this, and I've always kind of been proud of that fact. So, because, modern country, I'm glad we didn't fit into that sound, and we're a little bit different. So
I'm glad of that too. And in our show, we play nothing but the traditional music and the old style music. And there's a lot of artists that are still doing this fabulous music, as we talked about. And so you fit right in with our program. And we've got people all over the world that absolutely love this music. So we get more listeners every week.
Yeah, and it's music that's timeless. I mean, there really is. To me, I mentioned earlier the 50s and 60s were my two favorite decades, but there's you go back to the 30s and 40s, and there's great music from the 70s. It's just harder to find in 80s. But to me, the heyday of music was that mid 20th century country music. There was just a lot of great songwriters and a lot of great lyrics, and a lot of the music still resonated about the country and about our lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's what country music's all about. And the more people that I talk to, it's definitely the songs and the people that are writing songs that give music its longevity. And this stuff is going to be around for generations to come because of that. Because people can relate to it.
I'm seeing a brand new younger audience that's figuring out how wonderful the old country music is, and the old Western music. And a lot of our fans that come out to see us are now that next generation that's kind of just discovering the music for the first time and seeing that the real quality of it that's there. And there's other bands like Dale Watson and so many other bands that are doing this older style music, older sounds that have young audiences, so that's kind of neat.
Absolutely, and shows like what we're doing with the internet and the satellite radio sure gives a lot of resources for people to find this music. And
yeah,
Dale Watson's one of our favorites. I play a lot of his songs on my show, and he's been on the show, and he's another one of those. That Ameripolitan sound that he's got is just fabulous.
Yeah, and him and I, we got started at Ronnie Mac's Barn Dance back in the late 80s, early 90s. We were both unsigned artists. He got signed by Curb, and then we got signed by an independent label out of Los Angeles there. And so we were on this, sharing the same stage together. And I really appreciate Dale because he stuck to his guns and didn't let Nashville influence his sound, and he's another one of those guys. He listened to my song "Nashville Never Wanted Me" and got a good chuckle out of it.
I'll bet he did. Yeah, I'll bet he did too. He's got some songs along that line too that are great.
Yeah, Nashville bashing songs. It's easy to do.
Yeah. But I do love Nashville. There are a lot of people down there. Every time I go down there, it's real easy to seek out and find people that feel like we do.
Lower Broadway, and that the sound that we're talking about is still going on in Nashville. And a lot of my friends, a lot of musicians. I go there to record, and a lot of great musicians, and a lot of people that really get our style of music and that old style of country that are still around Nashville. So it definitely is a place that still has life to it.
Absolutely. Well, 15 songs on this brand new album. I want to talk about a couple more of them that I really like that kind of stood out to me. One is called "What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding."
Yeah, so we always get requests for Elvis, so I always pull out an Elvis Costello song, so that was one of those songs that came from our live shows, and I always thought it was a great song with a great message, and we kind of did a country / birdsy sounding version of it that came out really good on the album, I thought.
I like it a lot. That's one that really stood out for me. Elvis Costello is a very unique entity all unto himself. He's done so many different genres of music, including some fabulous country music, and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, and I knew, listening to Elvis early on, in the 80s, I know he appreciated country music, and I forget the name of the album he did that sounded really country, but he's always had that country side to him, and he's one of those artists that is a great songwriter, a great vocalist, that his music crosses any genres. It crosses into other genres, and I kind of like that about him.
Absolutely. That album is called Almost Blue. It's one of my favorites.
Yep, that's it.
And he's recorded with George Jones. He's recorded with Loretta Lynn. Just lots of great stuff out there. So it's good to hear that influence has found its way onto your project as well.
Yeah.
Tell me about Hope Lives in You.
Well, I'm a Christian. I'm not afraid to share that part of my faith and part of who I am, and it's a very important part of my life. And that song was just came from my faith and from my belief in the gospel, and it's one of those songs that's kind of a special song to me on the album. When I'm not out on the road performing, if I'm home on a weekend, I'm here at my little church of 40 or 50 people singing for the church, and so that part of my life is really important.
Yeah, amen to that. And that's a song we're going to be playing on our Sunday Country Gospel show. And I quite often, you have a song, Jesus Loves Me, that was on your Get Wild album some years ago, and I play that one often. That's another one that I absolutely love. So, yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Tell me about Sea of Heartbreak, the wonderful Don Gibson song.
Don Gibson's one of those guys I just think is such a huge talent from the 50s and 60s that's kind of been overlooked in terms of, everybody, talks about Merle Haggard and George Jones, deservedly so, but I think Don Gibson was another one of those just giant talents. And I always just loved his vocal style, his songwriting style, the way he brings life to his original songs and the cover songs that he did. So I got a special place in my heart for Don Gibson, and but I wanted to do one of his songs, and that's one of those songs that we play in our live show that all the dancers always get out to, and people always smile and tap their feet when they hear that song.
Absolutely. Yeah, Don Gibson in recent years has gotten more of his due, I guess, since he's passed away. Andy Barnett did a fabulous tribute album to him, and a lot of people are tipping their hat. Like you said, his songwriting was just outstanding, and he was one of those artists that you always knew who it was when he came on. He's got that sound,
Yeah, and I can remember listening to a lot of his songs growing up, and they made me happy. There was something about he had this real jumpy guitar rhythm that went into his songs that I just really liked. So
absolutely. Another song on this album that I thought was a very prolific title is called "Tears Only Run One Way."
Yeah, and that's a Robbie Folks song. And Robbie, I have a huge library of kind of Americana artists and quirky artists, and speaking of artists that never got their due, Robbie's one of those songwriters that I just think is a wonderful songwriter and a wonderful performer, and I always wanted to do one of his songs, and that was one of those songs that just kept, when I came up on my iTunes library and I listened to it, I said, boy, I got to do a cover of that. It's just a great song.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. What are a few of the favorites on this album that you would kind of single out?
Well, and another song, "Stranded on a Gravel Road," is just kind of about our lifestyle out here, out west. Kind of a tongue-in-cheek song about the cowboys in my life that own the old Dodge pickups that you have 300,000 miles on them, and they're trying to get to the sale ring with a load of calves, in the back of the trailer, and they're pulling it with this beat-up old Dodge pickup. So that's kind of a fun song that I like. And Cowboy Vernacular is about the language of our culture and the words that the cowboy use. I've always had an ear for the funny way the cowboys talk, so that's kind of a reflection of that. And, a song, Hotrod Yodel, I always try to put a yodel song or two on the album, and Hotrod Yodel is a song that I've always loved, the fancy, fast cowboy style of yodeling with a little rockabilly thrown in. So
absolutely, I like ukulele yodel too. That's
yeah. And that song, I always put a song or two that's kind of. We do a lot of our songs get on soundtracks for TV shows and movies, and I always write one that I think will be placed, that could be easy to place in movie or TV soundtracks, and that was the ukulele yodel that you just mentioned.
Yeah, now you and your family were just featured on a commercial here recently, right?
Yeah, the God, what is it? The name of the commercial? God Loves the Farmer. The old Dodge. It's a 2-minute Dodge commercial, and it aired on the Super Bowl a couple years ago. But they keep that. It's one of those commercials that keeps coming around, and it's big on Facebook and whatnot. You keep seeing posts of God Made a Farmer. Our family was part of the photo shoot of that commercial, and so we felt really lucky to be in that, because it really is my favorite commercial of all times, and it again gives a nod to the culture, the forgotten culture of the people that put the food on our tables.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And folks, you can go visit cross3quarterhorses.com. That's Wylie's website for his ranch. And you own and operate a long-time family generational cattle and cutting horse ranch.
Yeah, you get me started talking about horses, and we'll be here for a half hour or so at least. But horse is a big part of my life. I still, when I'm not out on the road, compete with cutting horses and raise cutting horses, and it's just one of those things that I've always loved. My dad went down to Texas in 1938 and brought up some of the first quarter horses to Montana. So I always grew up around good horses and still like being around them. So we breed them and raise them and train them and sell them. So if anybody needs a good cow horse, quarter horse, you can go to our website, Cross 3 Quarter Horses, or better yet, our Facebook site, Cross 3 Quarter Horses.
That's great. We'll put that information on our Facebook page as well. My brother owns and operates a ranch down in southern Georgia, so I'm always interested to hear more about that too.
Yeah, a lot of good horses and horsemen down there too.
Yeah. Now on the cover of your album, it's a really cool cover. It just takes me back to like a 1940s or 1950s thing. And you've got a donkey on there. Tell me how that came about.
So that's Coco is the donkey's name. She's actually a miniature donkey, and she was we adopted her from a family that was moving out of town and couldn't take the donkey with them. So she's basically the pet around the Cross 3 Ranch, the only donkey that we have here. But the horses kind of like her and put up with her. But and my family said, "Why do you have that donkey? All you do is feed her." I said, "Well, I'll give her a job." So she ended up on the front cover of our CD, and I have her packing an amplifier and standing in the middle of the road with me playing my guitar. So I'm not sure if she enjoyed doing that, but it's one of those album covers that turned out really good.
It really did.
We had a lot of fun doing it. Kind of got a little humor to it, you know.
So if you see a donkey coming down the road with an amplifier, you know Wylie's coming to town, right? Speaking of which, you've got a lot of tour dates. They can be found on your website at wyliewebsite.com. And tell me a little bit about the guys that are picking with you these days.
Well, they're all Montana boys, and I'm really lucky to. You know, it's hard to find guys that play our old style of music, but we found some guys in Montana that love the old style country music and are just wonderful players. And you know, having guys that you enjoy being around, as well as you know, because you got to work with them and be out on the road with them and share motel rooms sometimes. So I got a great bunch of guys. And Clayton Parsons is my guitar player. Tim Lashley is my drummer. He's from Helena. And our bass player is a guy called Johnny Pope. So that's our live band that we tours around the country. And you know, good bunch of guys, and I just enjoy playing with them.
How do you balance running? I know running a ranch is a full-time job within itself. How do you balance that and then going out on the road and doing dates?
It's tough sometimes, you know, because livestock needs to be fed every day, especially in the winter. So I have a guy who helps me here when I'm gone in Conrad and feeds all the animals and takes care of them, and then my wonderful wife, and I got some boys, young boys that are help pitching in every once in a while. So it's a bit of a juggling act, especially during haying season in the summer, you know, trying to get the hay up and then leaving every weekend or so to go play. It can be hard. Sometimes we're gone for a couple of months. We've done some couple tours we did was an Australia tour for 6 weeks and a China tour for 3 weeks back in 2015. So and last year we were on a bunch of Midwest tours for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So it's one of those things where you just have to figure out how to make it work. But again, it's a lifestyle that I love to come back to, and a lifestyle that influences my music so much. So I just the music, the ranching, you know, feeds the music, and vice versa.
Absolutely. Well, I want to ask you a question, and this really is for my own personal interest. When I first met you, the Get Wild album had just come out, and you've got a song, and there was a video for this on there with Merle Haggard called Ugly Girl Blues. Can you tell me how that came about and what it was like recording with Merle Haggard?
Sure. Back in 1994, we got hired to open up for Merle Haggard at the Sahara in Las Vegas, big casino there. Like, it was a 10-day run during National Rodeo's finals. So over those 10 days, we got to know Merle and his band really well, and I got to tell you, Merle was just a wonderful, wonderful man. Kind of took us under his wing, and while we were there, he said, well, why don't you guys come up and record your next album at my studio up in Redding, California? And we were all over that. So we recorded our second album with Merle at his studio, and he came in the studio, sang a couple songs with us, and kind of hung out with us a little bit, did a video of Ugly Girl Blues. So he was just a really nice guy that I think wanted to help a young band, and he sure did. And we had a lot of fun playing and shooting the video with Merle.
That's a great song. I love that. He recorded another song with you as well?
We did, he did a version of Devil Woman with us.
Oh, wow.
It was never released. I'm trying to find the master tapes of all the stuff he did with us, and I think he did one more with us. We're trying to go back and find that old stuff so we can re-release it.
Absolutely. Well, let me know when you do. I would absolutely love to hear that. I'm a huge Merle Haggard fan, and I would love to hear that, especially Devil Woman, the old Marty Robbins song. What a great song.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that album, along with many of Wylie's other albums, and of course his brand new album, 2,000 Miles from Nashville, can be gotten at wyliewebsite.com, and of course Amazon and iTunes and all those famous places that we have on the internet. And I encourage you to pick this up and listen to it all the way through. It's a wonderful journey, and there's so much great music, and you're going to be hearing a lot of it on our show. And Wylie, I wish you the very best, and I thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show, and thank you especially for this wonderful album.
I sure appreciate that, Scott. Thank you.
All right, that is Wylie Gustafson, Wylie in the Wild West, 2,000 miles from Nashville. We're going to play some cuts from that album for you right now as we continue with My Kind of Country on MKOCRadio.com.